But okay, let's get started. Everyone who's here is here who's coming. Lee will not be here tonight. So did people have a chance to go over the minutes?
Yeah.
I just wanted to go over it about some things that were in there that I have not had a chance to do. I did speak to Connor about the whole issue with the school buses, and unfortunately, I guess we won't be able to get into responses to the survey today. I was interested to know if there was any new input on that, if the numbers might have jumped. We are significantly below the, what was the other survey that was going on at the same time?
The town center.
Yeah. So they had something like 300 plus responses. And as of 2 weeks ago, we were at about 52. So
Yeah, but I thought she just said we're.
Yeah, she updated that, didn't she?
Oh, she did?
Yeah, we're up to 172.
Yeah.
So.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's great.
So
Where did she say that?
It's in an
it
email.
was in the email with this, wasn't it?
I think so.
Can you scroll up?
Oh, no, I can't bring up the.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was in the email that had these minutes in them.
Oh, I didn't look at I basically grabbed the minutes and that was it. Anyway, I did talk to Connor about the issue that, the response to the school bus in the surveys was not that positive. And that we felt that there was an education issue there, that it was not only the power aspect of it, but it was the health aspect of it that's really not being ignored. And I asked him specifically about going to the school board. And he thought that, so there are two ways of going to the school board. They have an open whatever at every meeting where you can get 3 minutes to speak on anything you want, or you can arrange to have, a section of the meeting devoted to whatever it is you're wanting to present. So I think that's probably the way we should go. And of course, I'm not going to say this. So I think that's the way I'm going to go. I'll get in touch with Rick Walker about it. There's 2 items that I want to go into with them. One is the school buses and different aspects of that power and health. The other is this discount rate on electricity that goes along with group net metering. We'll get into that a bit more. There's been some more contacts about that. CPCNH is doing that. So that's what I'm planning on presenting to them. And I was wondering if anyone had any input on that idea. Good, bad.
I mean, it seems like the logical.
Yep.
To me.
I don't know what else.
You gotta get in there somehow.
And we'll see if we can raise some interest on that. Other than that, I was good on minutes. Any additions, corrections? Okay.
Just Katrin, I think she has an E on the end. All
Yeah, it's like the Swiss spelling, Katrin, Katrin.
E, 1, 2.
I'm not generally looking for that stuff. But I will correct it.
I wasn't at the meeting, and towards the end there, you referenced something that I could.
You're going to have to give us more than that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it
News
was
item or?
Am I too far down?
Decisions to be made. Oh, never mind. I'll ask you next time I see him.
Oh, have a look.
PUC renet metering more changes. Yeah, can you just expand on that CPC and HA one? I'm not sure I know what that means. Number 6.
Oh, okay. There was they actually made an announcement about this. So the docket, there was a docket on this issue before the PUC. They did have a meeting on it. They made some decisions. I don't have them in front of me, so I don't really want to talk about them because I don't remember them that well. Basically, they accepted a bunch of the proposals that had been put forth by both the utilities and Clean Energy New Hampshire and CPCNH. The simple stuff. As far as load reconciliation went, so they basically are extending the net metering program. It's going to continue existing as it has been specified net metering 2.0. They would not extend the duration of that this was going to be on for. It was 20 years when it was established. They wanted it to have another 20 years. They wouldn't do that. And the rest of the stuff they're going to analyze over the next couple of months and try to resolve the issues. Whether that means that they're going to resolve the load reconciliation issues, I don't know. I don't think so. And I'll discuss why a bit later on. I have an article that I can present to you that the PEC is basically not supporting that move and or the moves that would be needed to come to a resolution. And I don't believe that with Kelly Ayotte there's going to be any change in the PEC.
Got it.
So, or no change in attitudes at any rate. So I'm not optimistic about that. I can send you the statement that is put out on this if you want.
Oh, thank you. I think I just found it anyways.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where'd you find it?
I Googled. I Googled it on my phone so I can keep up.
Okay. We'll forgo the survey update. I also talked to Connor about doing the Friday investigation. We have to be very careful not to affect the server room. But he said he's fine with us doing some experiments. So this is about, you weren't here last week. Jack and I don't know who else, are getting daily dumps from the statistics on the power, the building. And what I realized was that on the days when the building is not being used, the power is a bit lower, it's consumed is a bit lower, but not significantly. So we're at about 160 kilowatt hours on a normal business day. We're at about 120 on a day when the building is basically unused. So Jack wanted to investigate that by coming in on an off day and seeing what was on, what could be turned off, where the power was being consumed. Connor's fine with us doing that. He's not particularly concerned about the amount of time. I mean, it's
And what I expected.
yeah,
Still,
yeah. And he's looking at it in terms of how big a hit on the budget is it, and it's small. I mean, the electricity bill is not a big budget, so he's not concerned. But I think that it is worth our while to see what's going on and use it as an example, if nothing else, of what can be done. This is probably not going to be an isolated case.
does that mean it's okay to shut down all the computers?
He would prefer that we, not in the server room.
Okay.
He feels that the rest of them should be off for the most part. He said a lot of people have laptops, but he said, well, there are a number of towers in here as well. So yes, we should be able to do that, but he also suggested, and I'm sure you have a point, Andy, or I have a point. We can look at what's being drawn on each breaker as well and see what.
Yep.
I don't know how well the breakers are marked for what they're serving. I assume pretty well.
Pretty well, yeah.
So you're probably gonna want to be here to do this, right?
Somebody's gonna let you in.
Well, that's true. There is that.
That means you.
Well, actually,
I
we
guess so.
we can get into everything but I don't know about
You
the
can't get into
server.
You can't get in the utility.
Yeah, I can from the back.
If your card is,
I've done it.
oh, you came in that way.
Yeah.
It's
It probably should.
limited security for Well, I didn't do that, but I mean, cards are supposed to be set up for certain things.
So you do
You know, like
realize.
chairmen of committees are supposed to be able to come into the meeting room, but
I'm
not officers.
I'm
And
king of the building. You realize that if you're there, we can blame everything on you.
I know that. I guess so.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I want to do this Friday. When do you want to do it?
Yeah, definitely not this Friday.
Or let us know.
Maybe next week. I don't know. He's the one who actually has to come in
Yeah.
on a non-paid day. You and I are, free agents. So what's your story?
I don't have anything scheduled for Fridays. There's
Because you're
still
not
a few
working.
changes. Well, I mean, yeah, that's true.
Also
But I
that.
That would work. Okay,
But I don't know. if
let's,
I personally schedule.
Well, let's think about next Friday.
The heat for this building is obviously not electric.
No, and I don't know if he's got setbacks on that or not.
No, but, fans and things like that.
yeah,
electricity.
that's all right. So you got air handlers.
Yeah.
That, you
They're
know,
set back, they're set back.
he said the set, there's not much of a setback,
Yeah,
which in a building like this would make sense.
Right.
Actually, next Friday or week from tomorrow is a crappy day for me.
Okay.
Well, I can do it in the morning that day, but I'm gonna have to. It's nice. Clean Energy New Hampshire legislation. See what's going on. So I could miss that if I had to, but I can't miss my physical. So,
Let's play by ear.
okay. We'll do that. Press release is out. We already talked about that. So I had briefly discussed with you that CPCNH is now a rec aggregate. They are buying recs at $35 each. And the parent, and I know you weren't interested in going.
No track record. I mean, like 35 now, is it?
I don't know how rapidly those things can change, but so in general, what the coalition has been offering price wise has usually been slightly better than what other organizations are offering. I'm not speaking specifically about recs. I'm speaking about discount rates, the utility or the energy rates. And it makes some sense that they can do that, except that they're trying to build up their reserves. That's the only thing that speaks against it. I mentioned this to Connor. I don't know that he's really interested in, whatever effort it would take to get this reassigned, but I did ask the question, can you reassign rec purchases from one organization?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, we haven't signed a contract, but.
Oh, I think he did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I
In
didn't
fact,
hear
I
that.
know he did because he sent me the copy.
Did it sell it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there's no urgency on that, but we might want to do that. I mean, we are Barrington Community Power as well as the Energy Committee. And sort of, if we can do that. far as I know, we don't earn it. So there's no conflict of interest. So that was it for the townhouse solar installation. Unless you, are you going to the monthly figures? How is that going? You sent me handwork job of November.
Well, so I get that Excel spreadsheet without totals. You can't total it,
Yeah.
but that was,
Oh, I thought you had created that.
no, I get that directly from solar
Oh, okay.
thinking once a month. That was the first one we got.
Okay. And it's not actually. We didn't have a complete one. That really started after the first week or so.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to take care of?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. We will review it at per year.
Yep.
Good.
Well, what about April? We got to take a serious look.
Oh, and see how we're doing. Okay, that would be good. I'm glad to look at intermediates. Cindy, you said there's nothing new on Stratford Cap.
So, yeah, so if you'll recall, Pat and I attended a meeting where they had their grant writer involved, and her mission is to go off and look at various grant opportunities and decide which ones are most likely to work. The proposed grant from the CEO over there was, shoot, but in any case, the grant writer felt there might be other opportunities, and some of them did have time limits. I see that's your next question, but that they didn't feel that was going to be a problem. They would have no trouble spending it all quickly.
Okay.
Was consensus on that. I have a note to reach back out to them at the beginning of the new year.
Oh,
Because
because
they're supposed to get back to us, but
and we're sort of
follow up.
in the time frame when they were going to get back to us, right? It was a couple of months, and I think.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I was going to give them until January 1st.
Okay, no, that makes sense, and not much happens in December. so-
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it for that.
anything on the Peterborough stuff that we should know?
So, I guess where I'm at right now with that is I thought they had several different things in place that we might want to look at doing. That was going to help me with that, and now, so I can manage the Stratford Cap thing.
Yeah, both of them is gonna be.
Probably not gonna really work. If somebody else is interested in working on any of the ideas that they helped me bring forth, that I think that could be really interesting. One of the ones I think is probably pretty good to look at would be a resiliency coordinator for the town. I mean, I think the town is going to need to think about hardening infrastructure and looking. I think isn't the USGS publishing new flood maps next year too? And any infrastructure that does get built probably should be built to withstand more, ice loads and like that. It's just my 2 cents on the thing that I think that I took away from what they're doing. I mean, the overall.
Are you saying this from something that you've reviewed on from what Peterborough has put in place?
So they have the title of their person is something slightly different. They had for lack of a better word, an energy guru that helped them set up the whole heat pump weatherization program. Like there was a full-time employee there. But what I did was I looked at what other towns had in place, because Peterborough is sort of in a different socioeconomic bracket and, just different mindset maybe.
Very different.
So, I was looking at like what Dover and Newmarket and other places were doing, and this resiliency coordinator stuff does seem to be popping up a bit. And I guess I hadn't had a chance to speak to this because I got bumped the last time, which is fine.
No, you did.
I
speak to
did.
this.
Okay. Because I got the job descriptions and stuff, and I'm not sure.
I don't think you presented those.
Yeah. Well, anyway, whatever. This is to me, that seemed like something that would be potentially doable, and that like fire department, police department, and that town group people would be, you know, with willing partners in, I think. I mean, I would suspect. So that was one project that seems sort of like you could have a 3-year plan for developing that and it could go somewhere.
So where we had left that was that you were going to try to get together with Connor to discuss this. And is anyone else interested in taking this on? Can anyone else take this on? I mean, this is something, my personal opinion is that I think this will be a few years before it goes in.
Yeah, well, that's why I said 3-year time frame.
Yeah, I think that's optimistic actually, but it's possible. I mean, the example that I brought forward was the position that was created or is in the process of being created for the Conservation Commission, which has been discussed for years.
Yeah.
And is now on a part-time basis is going forward. And it's going forward with initial funding from the Conservation Commission, which has a pretty good, it's not endowment. It has
It's a
pretty,
lot of money.
yes,
Yeah.
got a lot of money behind it. We don't have that advantage.
Right. Well, so if there's no interest in it, then I'm not doing it by myself, then that's fine.
Are there grants that fund this
Well,
kind of position?
so this is the kind of thing which is very much up in the air now. The situation. I don't think anyone is gonna make a prediction.
What about like a regional shared kind of position where you have like 3, 4, 5 municipalities that share one coordinator and they have the expertise and they bring it to all of those municipalities and then each municipality just pays a portion of that.
It's too bad we don't have that here. That would be something to go before Stratford Regional
Yeah,
Plan.
that's what I was thinking.
No.
But as far as resiliency, I mean, we've looked a little bit in Conservation Commission into, culverts and, there's a list of, substandard culverts, and I don't know how much more they would need to be upgraded, but there's a number that are bad already.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the whole slow water idea too, that culverts and drains are sort of only work up to a point, and then you need, sure you're more like this land, the wetlands and bends and rivers and stuff like that. But that's major engineering. I'm talking more just like if you build, say you build a school, you want to make sure, the more strong hail storms are predicted for our area, and that the windows aren't going to all get beat out, right? Like, so that's kind of an expensive repair later.
Yeah, I think this would apply to new buildings and.
Yeah.
Which would mean that, when we eventually do a new public safety bill or not.
Yeah.
But, an expansion of the public or an upgrade.
And I think to some extent, things like on-site generators to keep central operations running and facilities for sheltering in place for residents and stuff. Like if what happened in Asheville happened here,
Right. Yeah, no, we've thought about that. We were thinking of public safety building as being the first significant project in town that might consider that, and then it didn't get passed.
Right.
Funding on a study, so kind of dead in the water on that. As far as contacting Stratford Regional Planning, should I go through Matt on something like that?
He's the coordinator. He's one of the two.
I'm assuming he
representatives.
kept that position.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll contact him about that. Cindy, I wanted you to do your stuff since you've got to
oh yeah.
take off before the end. You don't know about anything. Why don't you?
I mean, I'm not sure I go that far.
Why don't you talk again about what you were saying about some of the library funding stuff?
So we just wrapped up our giving Tuesday. Our goal was 30,000, and I expect we may get a couple of more checks rolling in the mail, and we're pretty close to that. So if the original projection for funding the solar holds, meaning that there's a 30% IRA credit and can get that covered, then we're down to about $7,000 left to raise to fund the project.
So once again, we're concerned about the uncertainty of whether that credit is going to stay in existence.
Well, and I think it's known, or what, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but we were going to ask the select board to authorize fronting the
Right.
credit, and if they don't feel secure in doing that, then they can't. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
So $52,000 exact.
Well, we're clearly not going to have an answer for that really until the end of 2025.
Yeah, I know. So it may, another option is to scale back the project and just use the funds that are available. But
Yep.
And there are a bunch of grant applications out, so it's possible that we can fund the whole thing. But I don't know.
What had you been anticipating for a schedule as far as solar installations?
Doesn't really matter now. The building's set up so it doesn't have to be done during
It
construction.
will be prepped and
Yeah.
it can be done at any time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're obviously not going to solve this problem now. One thing I did want to make sure of so that we avoid any problems such as happened here. Are we going to have drawn up plans that will be signed off by both code inspection and the fire department?
There's not going to be a reason to worry about the fire department.
Why not?
Because I'm not going to break any barriers. We did it here because all that roof is south facing.
Right.
Everything fits on the roof over there without breaking the barrier.
Don't you still want to have a drawn up plan to present to them?
Well, I give them a layout. Yeah, we do give them a layout.
Okay,
But Rick will have no say in this. It won't.
because it won't violate. it.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to sign off unless there's a
Nope.
violation. Okay, well, let's make sure that he sees it and, whatever verbal agreement we get on that. we
Yeah.
get. And, I'd like to be in on that. It's shown to him.
Yeah, it's really, if there's an 18-inch barrier at the tops and if there's 33-foot barriers on the sides,
It meets all the codes.
he's not even involved.
Yeah.
They take it to the building department and they approve it. That's it.
It seems as though the town doesn't have this process worked out.
Because,
Uh,
let's just say,
The reason I say that, Jack, is that what happened here was sort of who was to flag that? It was sort of up to us to flag it.
well,
And
so.
we did
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, absolutely.
but we didn't flag it well enough, as it turned out.
I think no matter what we did in the process, it was going to stop exactly where it stopped.
That could be.
That's just,
Let's try to make sure that,
yeah, no, stay away from that entirely.
okay, very good.
So I would say one more thing in regard to this, that if somehow we don't get elected pay, we could consider a PPA.
Oh, that's a really good point.
What's the price again? I don't remember.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that might actually be pretty easy to do.
What kind of PPA are you thinking of?
Well, so we're doing this at the Deerfield School. I didn't want to do any more PPAs, but it's like, there's just no other way to do them. And
So explain to me what the PPA is in this case.
well, basically I go out and borrow the money and buy the system and sell power to the town of Barrington at a discounted rate. And then at the end of 5 years,
They own
it could, well, no, at the end of 5 years, they can buy it.
it. I see.
But the way we were always doing them was we were building in a lot of front end profit, which made the loan a lot higher. And what Ted and I are doing in Deerfield is actually doing it at cost, no markup at all. And just borrowing the bare minimum required to get it over. And it's way easier to do. It's easier to get through the banks. It's easier to do the whole thing. So if you take my 40 grand out of there, it's $135,000. That's not, and I can get tax credit of 30%. So I can get tax investors. So now we took another 30 grand off it. So now we're down to 100. Not hard to do. If
Yeah,
we can't get electric pay. I mean, if that's the only way we can do it, then that's what we should
then
do.
there is another avenue.
Yeah, there is no
Yeah.
avenue.
That probably should be brought,
That should go to the trustee.
Yeah.
well, the trustees or the building committee, maybe, one of, well, the building committee is the one making kind of this.
So someone has to sign, the select board would have to approve a contract like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Or
just
the-
the
or the
library trustees
Yeah,
oversee the library.
and the building committee is defunct right now. I mean, there's
No, it's
some
not defined.
the main one stopped, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 4 of us.
So I guess the trustees then, do you want me to approach Susan about,
It's a little premature for that.
okay,
I'm just saying, let's just,
but maybe I
option.
should just mention to her that there is a fallback plan.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, why don't we skip the Clean Energy New Hampshire statement, since you were hoping that they would come out with something summarizing the meeting that you were at, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a very brief.
Okay.
So, Clean Energy New Hampshire held a meeting of sort of like debriefing on what the implications of the new administration would be for advancing some projects. Of course, everybody wanted to know what's going to happen with the IRA credits, and they basically said nobody knows, so we can't really talk about that. But they did raise a few good points. I thought they said, federal funding has always been temporary and hard to predict, and there are still a lot of local opportunities. And then they talked about things like you just mentioned, like, well, if you can't do it this way, you can do it this way, and you just sort of have to be a little bit more creative. But it wasn't, and they did, and I think maybe the larger point is they do have people dedicated to figuring out what the problems are going to be, which it's a little too early right now to know what they are, and to figuring out ways to solve them. And they have these meetings every third Thursday. And I will try to go to all of them.
Is this announced in this document somewhere? But this was Sam Evans.
Oh, his letter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it was in that letter or not. I had sent you a link to the meeting to share with everybody, but
I should be getting, I mean, I've got the town's membership and my own membership, so I should be getting this, but I don't recall it.
it's possible just maybe because just Katrin is my personal friend. She just sent it to me on my personal email too. I don't know. I just know I had the link to the meeting and I've been going to them every third Thursday. And they have different topics. Like the last one was if you were thinking about having an item on as a warrant article on the next town meeting, some things you should be prepping and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've definitely not seen this.
Okay, when I get them, I will forward them to you. And then you can
Well,
And he's zooming in.
I'll-
Zoom. Yeah.
if you can send me the names of what this series of meetings are, I'll just call
Yep.
CNH and tell them why am I not, ask them why I'm not being informed. Probably am, I'm throwing them away. Okay. So let's get into the coalition updates. I don't think anyone here attended the CEO hour. It was good. I do recommend them. They go over some very interesting things, and it does let you know where the coalition is on various projects that they're working on. So the first projects that they're doing now are as I discussed, group net metering, because basically what they've announced is the maximum price that they're able to provide for different types of projects. And the group net metering is the most profitable for them. So that's what they're going after. And a bunch of this stuff is proprietary. So I was talking to, his last name, Mark Bollinger, who is in charge of projects and various other things that concern the town. Probably going to rope him into a meeting with Connor at some point in the not too distant future. Okay, since we're being recorded and this is a public meeting, this is preliminary and I can't reveal the town that this project is taking place in. It is in Eversource territory, so we're eligible to participate in it. And it will be announced in the not too distant future. And what they're doing is they're participating in the project and they're also soliciting governmental, meaning state or municipal commitments to purchase. And this is very similar to the plans that we saw from Arcadia, which wasn't very well defined, but basically they're offering a discounted rate off of your energy rate. And you don't have to be on Eversource default. You can be on third party, so SEPs or a community power aggregation. And they're hoping to offer, as it says here, a 15% discount. But they have to evaluate this. This has to go through the risk management committee. They have to evaluate and make sure that this won't negatively affect what they're able to do in terms of building up reserves. What most of the other companies, and we've gotten another solicitation from a company called Kearsarge. We got one before. They seem to be offering about a 10% discount, but they're not clear. It uses up to language. So, that's never really know what that means. But
Definitely less than is what that means.
Yes.
Kearsarge, I went around 3 or 4 emails with them. By the time I was done, I didn't know any more than started.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
Confusing.
they said that they will actually do an estimate of what they will be able to do for the town. So I am going to get in touch with the guy who wrote the letter and tell them that we're interested in hearing what they've got to offer. And I don't know that they are strictly offering us purchase agreements from New Hampshire facilities. That's clearly what we would be interested in. And I believe if it's a group net metering, I believe it would have to be the state. I think it's Eversource territory and it has to be within the state boundaries. So that's by state statute.
Right.
As is the contingency that they have to offer. This can only be offered to governmental entities. It has to be municipalities or state organizations if it's not open to the general public. So this is something that the library might be interested in. So this should be presented to the library as well. And this is what I want to present to the schools, because the schools are certainly the largest power consumer in town. And The other thing I discussed with Connor was whether or not these required a warrant article. I had asked Mark about this as well. So because there is no expenditure, it's a discount off of the money of what you're being charged. So there is actually no advance expenditure involved. What Connor said was that technically it probably does not require a warrant article. However, this would be similar to the kind of arrangement that the town has with waste management, where, you know, if no waste goes to the facility, there's no charge. But they did put a warrant article together for that in the interests of transparency. So this is something where we probably should, and I'm going to start working with Connor on pulling together a warrant article. However, that we could also do something, we could do a contingent plan where the contingency would be based on the warrant article passing. So we would be able to do something on an interim basis. And once again, CPCNH isn't ready to go live with this. This project is probably not built yet. It's probably in the process of being put together. So this would only be occurring sometime in the future. I could be before the end of 2025, but probably not much before. So that's one of the more interesting projects that they have. And I think that the coalition is going to be offering a few of these in the not too distant future. They had I believe it was a biomass project that they were looking into that didn't seem as interesting as this beginning. But I think that in terms of group net metering on solar installations, there's going to be more of this coming. And I will be talking to Connor about participation. The other thing that you should be aware of is that it is getting near rate selection time. And here's the schedules for what's going to be happening in there. So coming up in 2 weeks, roughly, there's going to be a draft of the rate proposals. Now, if you recall, the last round, it went through the same process. There was a rate proposal that was put forward, and in the end, it was modified. So it was accepted. They were waiting for the inputs from the utilities. They had the investor-owned utilities already, but when the co-op came out with its rates, they were actually slightly lower than what the coalition was going to put together. So they scrambled and they decided that they could afford to lower the rate to beat that, which was, good for some community. It was good for Lee because otherwise Lee would once again not have been able to start up their community power aggregation. They had already been through one round of that with a third-party provider. It would have happened again. So they did lower that. When these numbers come out, I will be able to expose them to the group. They're not for public consumption at that point. It has to go through a couple of committees. It has to be voted on by the board, which will happen on the 30th. And at that point, we will be able to release them, which will actually be before the coalition. And we can put the new rates on the website at that point. So that's coming up. This was, so the other thing that came up, when I was talking to Connor the other day, I said, you realize that, we don't have a budget. So we were allocated money by the planning board and we have not spent any of that. And to be honest, I haven't seen any need to spend any of that. And Connor agreed. So I don't think that's going to change. However, if we do get into a situation where we start having a need for funds, I had been wondering about, there were a few things, we've discussed discretionary reserves in the past as a means for raising money for the library, for example, is what we were thinking about. And actually, there were some technical reasons why that might have been a bad idea. It would be better to raise money for ourselves and then disperse that money as we saw fit. I don't see any need to do that at the moment, but what I was interested in it was how other towns were doing this. What I noticed was, so Nashua, Peterborough, and a couple of other towns well, I guess they're listed here. So it's Canterbury, Nashua, Cheshire counties comes into that because the towns have to do this individually. But at least Canterbury, Nashua, and Peterborough have introduced discretionary rates. What's interesting is that and so they have an adder that goes into a fund that gets built up that the city or town can use. They've introduced that as the default. And what this means is that everyone who is on community default power switches over to that default, which surprised me.
Yeah.
And they're small adders. I'm sure that, if they had put a big adder on it, it would have caused an outcry. But I spoke to Mark Bollinger about that. He said he too was a little surprised that was how it worked. But
So just so I understand, what you're saying is these towns said the new default rate is the default rate plus some small fraction of a penny, and everybody's getting assigned that unless they opt out of it, and then that money is going to a reserve to be discussed later or whatever.
it's for the town use.
Oh, okay.
So in our case, it would be the select board that would make a determination on how those funds were going to be used. I'm assuming
They have to be used for, cheaper, can they be used to buy a snowplow or
there is
whatever?
no restriction.
Okay,
I'm assuming that since the source is through an energy adder, that we would act at least in an advisory capacity on how that would be done. We're not thinking of doing this.
yeah.
But I was wondering, well, how much do these things raise? And this actually came up with some numbers. So I think that the one that we would be most comparable here would be Canterbury. Does everyone know what kind of town it is?
Small.
What are the
Smaller
others?
than that.
What are the
Yeah.
other ones?
Peterborough and Nashua. Peterborough is.
Probably closer to Peterborough.
Yeah, but Peterborough put a pretty significant one in there. And the reason they did that, I think, was I don't believe that their default was Granite Basic before. I think they were the Granite Plus or whatever it's called. So,
There's only 2,500 people in Canterbury.
so it's really small. Well, this gives you an idea of what the adder that they put on raised. And it's not insignificant. So Canterbury did 0.2 cent adder, and they raised a couple of $1,000. I don't know if that was 1 or 2 months. Peterborough.
It feels like a PR nightmare.
I agree, but this is something that in the future, we might want to consider. I wouldn't think we would do it without we would try to make it public.
I don't think it's a PR nightmare if you do it as an additional rate. As a voluntary rate.
Yeah.
Which you can do. The trouble
Then you
is,
really wouldn't get much.
then.
Maybe from they shouldn't do it.
I mean, as we know from the reaction that we got the election, no one knows
Yeah.
about the community power aggregation. No one knows that they are no longer paying the Eversource default rate. I think there was one person that I spoke to that knew about that, from the people that went through. And I pointed out the amount of money that this had saved, Barrington residents. So I think you have to assume that we could do it as an opt-in. We would not get it.
Yeah. agree with that.
Yeah, I think
So
that's probably true.
not thinking about doing this now. I'm just, in the event that we actually come up with a project that needs some funding, it may be better just to go to the select. It may be better to put together a warrant article.
Yeah. But it's a good thing to know about, right?
Yeah. I just wanted people to be aware that I was wondering if this could bring in any substantial amount of money. And it does. It does. But that is enough about that.
And that screenshot was from the CPCNH website or something.
So
Was that a
as
presentation?
this was during, so the CEO hour presentation on projects and rates, it was more on, they call this discretionary adder product. And I was just taking screenshots as this stuff was flashing by. So it's I mean, anyone can participate in this meeting, so I'm assuming this was okay to have that for public distribution. There was some other things that you might be interested in. So these links will work for you on the agenda. Under the group net metering projects, you all have access to this through the Google Drive. And there is, I think this is it. So this has a summary of what group net metering is and how it's being handled. And it is a pretty good, tutorial on how the whole thing is being done. If you have any interest in how this works, I'd recommend going to that link and checking it out. It doesn't take long to work through this. And it's got, you might come away with a few questions on it. But on the whole, it's a pretty good explanation of how the group net metering is going to be handled, what the town would have to do in order to subscribe. So, oops. Pretend you didn't see that line there. Okay. Does anyone else have, so I'll bring up the Kearsarge Energy letter. This was sent to Connor, but it was forwarded on to me. Remember if there was anything in particular that they said. So this is what I was talking about, Jack. Receive a line item forecast of payments Barrington stands to receive under the group metering program. So I'm assuming they customize that to some extent. And of course, we'd have to ask them whether they're committing to the rates that they put into those estimates. They could always say no, in which case we would say, well, that's not very interesting, is it? This is the guy I'll get in touch with. This is not specific to Barrington, so it's meaningless. But what they do mention is a couple of the projects that they've that this is going towards. I don't know, Jack, you probably heard of some of these. Manchester landfill solar array. You know about
That's
that?
been going on for years.
Yeah, it's been up for a while.
8, maybe?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a
I cycled through it a couple of times.
So then they probably sold all the power that thing was generating, but they're probably, there are people that probably cancel out and it turns over to some extent. There was another one that they mentioned. There was one in Concord. Well, I'm not seeing that. Well, it doesn't matter, but they had, there's some mention of Dunbarton here, and I know I had seen one about Concord, but I'm not seeing it here, so it was probably in the letter.
Was that actually on the landfill?
Yeah.
I thought there wasn't one in the state of New Hampshire yet.
No, there's several.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good sign for us. on the landfill.
Oh,
We have a capped landfill.
well, no, cap landfills are fine. Problem with ours is it's a hill. We
Yeah,
have a big flat top.
And you couldn't do it flat on,
You know,
on
there
slope.
was a racking,
It's-
there was a racking that I thought might work for that, but
Yeah.
they turned out to be a nightmare and it's pretty steep.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest issue is you can't put anything underground. Everything's above ground.
the problem that as I understood it, was you had to cut into the cap, and that was a big problem.
No, they make racking
Cement
now
waste
that's
or
it's
something.
basically supported by rock cribs. You just put the rock cribs on top of the,
But you can't do it on slope. can you?
you know,
Yeah,
no,
that's-
that our landfill won't work.
and ours is very small.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no, it's not near any power either. That's the other thing. So
Right.
getting power off that would
Wah,
be.
wah, wah.
It would be
Every
nice.
time I drive by it, I'm like, I feel like that'd be a good place for solar.
Yeah, no, look at that. Trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, plenty of gravel pits.
Yeah.
The other thing was, you remember Clyde Mirambo from Arcadia Solar? He was the guy who seemed to know nothing, that sort of had arranged that meeting. And he has, it's not clear to me whether Arcadia has been acquired by a bigger company and they're sort of offering the same thing, which is as unclear now as it was then. But he got back in touch. And it was as obscure as ever. And what I reminded him was that we had 3 requests coming out of that meeting, and we didn't get responses on any of them. So I told him that if he could get us the same, answer the same questions for whoever it is that he's now working for, that we might be interested in talking to them again. But beyond that, he didn't need to get in touch with us. We haven't heard back. So, well, we actually did hear back. He said he would work. And I suspect
The
that,
questions now.
I think Tiffany is going to field this, and my suspicion is that we will probably never hear from him again, which is fine. But you said you did deal with Kearsarge and sort of felt like you got around as well.
Yeah, I couldn't, here's the thing that I couldn't wrap my head around. They kept saying, this is no penalty. It doesn't hurt Eversource, or it doesn't hurt community power, on and on and on. But, you sign up for community power to buy a certain amount of power, and then they're taking 90% of the money.
Yeah, I don't think that.
So I can't, I don't know, I have to read it a lot more because I just don't get it. I don't understand how a lot of these things work.
And I guess they're under no clear obligation to explain completely how their stuff works. But this is sort of another reason why I would be inclined more towards the coalition, because
Yeah.
they do explain it.
Mhm.
And since they're providing both the discount rate and we're purchasing power through them, it makes more sense.
Well, that, and fundamentally, it seems like we've made a commitment to help build a nonprofit for the benefit of everybody, and then to send the money to them, it's like, well, wait a minute, why is that? That doesn't help us in our goals. I don't think.
My 2 cents on this was the letter, the original letter that Connor forwarded to all of us.
To Concord forward this to all of us?
Yeah, with no investment or outlay, no use of town land, no change to electricity services, no interference with community power, and no downside risk. You can get thousands of dollars. I'm like, that doesn't sound real.
Well, that's no interference with community power is the one that got me, because we're not paying them anymore. We're
Well,
paying.
like, how does that work? It just doesn't sound
But
real.
it is the same claim that the coalition is making. The coalition is saying that they can do that for subscribers who are on Eversource power, SEP's power, or community power. So it's sort of the same thing. Maybe we'll be able to get a better explanation.
Seems like we're taking money from Peter to pay Paul or Howard.
Well,
Yeah.
what I can do is, I can ask Mark Bollinger if he would participate in a Teams meeting. And,
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, the transition from Eversource to community power, I get. That's a simple
Yep.
thing where we're buying power from them
Yeah.
But then to put another one beyond that, that we're gonna buy power from, even though we have an agreement with community power to buy power.
Well, he should be able to explain to us how the coalition will do
Yeah.
it, whether or not he can explain to us how these other companies are doing it.
Yeah.
And probably he can. We should know.
I mean, I can explain the simplest of group net meter agreements, because I have one.
Right.
Essentially, Eversource pays me whatever the going rate is for the kilowatt hours. And I pay an entity a certain amount of money every year for the use of their data. And that's the extent of the transaction.
Okay.
So any power that I put onto the grid, I have to offset with someone's usage.
Right.
And for that, they get paid a certain amount of money.
That actually brings up another point. There was, I think this was in the coalition documents. They said that the plan has to be actually oversubscribed. How can you have more commitments to provide power than you can provide? Does that make sense?
Well, you can't have less. So you have to have more.
Yeah.
You can't have less. Because if you have less, you're giving Eversource back the money.
Oh, I see. So what if demand exceeds production?
That's all.
Well, on the Eversource end, on the Eversource end, it doesn't. On one end of the transaction, it doesn't, because they're only paying for what they actually meter. So that's the actual value. On the other side of the transaction, there's often a true up.
Oh, so it gets reconciled.
Yeah, you reconcile at the end of the year.
Okay. That's probably how it gets here.
But it can't be less, because if it's less, you owe money to Eversource.
Right. Okay, moving on. Did anyone have any other items to bring up?
CPCNH put out an annual report template for each town in the coalition.
Thank
Did you see that?
Yes.
And it's a template, so.
So it's the one that we looked at last meeting, but
Okay.
I thought they would only do that. I thought the interval they would do that in each new rate period. I don't know that we want to publish one that it's for a couple of months.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem with this year, is that it's only.
Is it calendar year?
Or I think so.
Well, so I don't know what it is. I wanted to ask them, are they going, it seems like maybe they'll put this out every month. I mean, it's easy for them to do. It's just
Yeah.
plugging in a number into a template, and they have those numbers. They're reporting on those numbers anyway. But I'm really not interested in the one right now. Like I said, I think that's probably, it may be 2 months. It certainly isn't more than. It was something like $150,000, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it's something that we could include in the town's annual.
I want to include it in the town's annual. That's very specifically where I want to have it. But when do we have to have the paperwork in for that?
I don't know. I mean, they're given out at the town meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
but like January.
Yeah.
I thought it was like February.
Yeah, probably February. They gotta have them so many days before.
Yeah. They do print them really fast, but
Yeah, I would like to have it as late as possible.
for bigger.
So that the numbers, I would really like it to represent the entire first, rate period for August through January. That may not be possible, but I'd like.
Tiffany handles the publishing of that, so she'll know the date.
Okay, I'll talk to her about it and I'll go over the template with her, but thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. Doug, you should know that there were, I think, 25 people who chose to sort of buy up
They opt up, yeah.
Oh, was that in the template as well?
That's what was listed, 25 of 3,000.
Well, it was what, a dozen earlier on.
Well, yeah.
so
It's
double.
slowly going.
Hey, you gotta look at that.
It's 25 more.
Hey. I had an item related to that. I was looking at the, it's called disclosure label. This is what they
Yeah.
usually send out, or actually Eversource sends it out on Eversource, but CPCNH has one. And I just happened to notice that they're listing the actual renewable standard as 16% instead of 23.7 or whatever.
In the
And
coalition?
it turns out that the state's been fooling around with that for years now. And I was surprised I didn't know this. But if you go to it, I don't know if you can get on, you can, there's a link to it on our.
Doug, are you saying, can you do that?
Well, the renewable portfolio standard
Yes.
sets the required amount that each utility has to have. in
Right, and I thought it was
renewables, right?
about
And
24%.
it's, yeah,
What's
and it goes up
called,
each
Doug?
year.
There's a name.
It's the disclosure label. If you go on our CPC website and you scroll to the bottom, there's a little item about it.
Oh, there is, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it stopped going up.
Well, it stops this coming year, 2025, at 25%, 25.2, and then it like flattens out. But the dirty little secret is that it was the PUC, but now it's the Department of Energy has the discretion to change that if they can't they can't get the RECs, I guess. They can't
Oh, geez.
come up with the power. And it turns out it's class 3. There's like 4 classes within the RPS. It's a little complicated, but class 3 is the biomass, the wood burners. And it turns out they're not,
Running.
either they're not running. I think they're running, but they're not being available for New Hampshire utility. They're selling them to other folks.
Oh.
And so each year when they true up or whatever, they decide that, oh, you can't get the power from them, so we're gonna knock that down. And so it went from 8% to 2%, and then it went down to 0.5%. So they're only getting 0.5% of the renewable power from these biomass burners. And so they've been doing this every year since 2020. And so, we all thought, oh, it was going up each year, but no, it's actually been going down.
And but this is true of everyone. Everyone is having
Yeah.
trouble buying RECs to.
Right, probably, yeah.
Oh, this is probably why the coalition is so interested in being able to buy people's RECs, because they're probably not being able to meet their commitments.
And maybe, but the point is
Where were you
they get a break if you set the.
Yeah, this is the
So-
disclosure
Okay.
label.
So in other words, the true rate of renewables is 16%, not 23.
Yeah, if you scroll down, it should.
You're on biomass, would be at the top.
Yeah, well, it's you look at the total renewables,
it
it's
doesn't-
16 point something. If you look in the blue, the middle one,
Yeah.
Oh,
Total
total
renewables?
renewables 16 point
yeah,
something.
not 23, 24.3. And so, and that's what that's what even the Eversource one is similar. It's not the exact same number.
Oh, I see. And they're making up with the other ones by buying out of state, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, but the point is that's all they're being required to get. And
That's,
so
it's interesting.
I
that-
scroll down and there's a way you can link to the state
So the
website.
minimum RPS, it's not really a minimum because they must have some requirement that it be in state. Do you know about the RPS?
No, I don't know if that's the issue.
Because why wouldn't they just go outside and,
Yeah, and the weird thing is they show the biomass being, you see it 6.7%, or, it's not like they aren't buying biomass power. But like I said, the state's not requiring them to do it. So, so you can go to this, DOE website and they list, each year there's this, what do they call a rate order they do with the PUC that says, no, we're not going to make you pay this. You're going to pay this amount for all the utilities, So anyway, I thought it was curious, and the interesting thing is what that results in is that if you go with Granite Plus, you're actually getting twice as much renewables because you're going from 16 to 33, right?
As you are with
More
basic,
than
yeah.
twice. So I'm just saying, maybe it's a selling point. I don't know what to impress anybody, but I thought that was curious that, for
No,
a
that,
buck or so a month more, or a few bucks, you get twice as much renewables.
And the big
Curious.
jump is, looks like it's wind.
it is, yeah, and I'm assuming that's why I'm wondering if the RPS requirement is in state. And then when they go with these other ones, since that no longer is linked to the portfolio
Yeah.
standard, they can go out of state for that. Because
Yeah.
you know that this wind is not coming from in state.
No. Yeah. Yeah, no, they're certainly not required to get it in state.
Hydro's a little.
While we're on it, I thought it was interesting they're getting zero nuclear, which is also what Eversource is getting. And so between CPC and Eversource, that's like most of the state, right?
Isn't
As far
like
as
Florida Power and a bunch of other out-of-state companies that own Seabrook?
Yeah, well, it's owned by, it is
Owned
owned
by
by the city area of
Florida.
Florida Power, but it's going to other places in New England, because the region-wide average, if you look on that second to last column, it's like 17% nuclear. So the point is Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, I guess, are getting
Now, using
more
that
than
power.
they're using most of it. So it's just kind of interesting. I don't know whether that's a decision or it's just it wasn't available. They weren't making it available. But I find it interesting that we've got this new plant in our state and nobody's
Yeah.
making
It's not
use
used in state. The power is not
not at all.
imported.
I mean, it used to be, substantially, and they love to talk about it's 57% of the total power generation. Yeah, but it's 0.00 of the consumption, So anyway, I just found that.
No,
interesting.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
The-
Yeah, and I'm surprised I hadn't noticed that either, because like I said, it's been going on for several years, this 16%. And again, if you go to the state website, you can see each year that,
Oh, it's.
it starts out, and if you look for 2024, it says 24.7%.
And then
but-
they'll reduce it to 16.
Probably, yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, the whole thing's crock, so. And unfortunately, it's probably not gonna change given our
Price of Rex down.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and and that's part of their argument, right, is that they don't have, the Rex aren't worth it. So anyway, it's just, I found that curious.
Why wouldn't that increase the demand for Rex and raise the price?
Well, they're suppressing that, right? They're keeping what was supposed to happen was the RPS requirement was going to increase every year, which would keep
Right.
the demand for renewables and RECs growing,
Right.
but they're artificially suppressing it.
They're allowing it to be less than what the
Yeah.
minimum is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they have an alternative compliance payment. If you don't get Rex, you got.
Which is where the rebate stuff
And
comes.
then they're keeping that low too. So, it's all a scam, I think. Certainly compared to what other states are doing. Yeah.
Well, on other cheery notes, this was an article that I saw when I think I was searching for the audio piece. And the title of it doesn't really say, but basically the PUC had commissioned a study on another study on value of distributed energy resources. And they didn't like what it said, so they're throwing it out.
This is universal. This is universal. There are 40 or 50 of those studies nationwide, and nobody has accepted them. I mean, there's one from Maine that I got from 3 years ago that suggests the value of renewables is like 22 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Everybody freaked out when they saw that. And this one was also positive on the value of renewables.
Well, I know there was the study on the cost shifting that was done a while ago, and they've ignored that. But yeah, this was yet another one. It was just completed.
Yeah.
So they've been looking into fair compensation for local energy resources, and they decide that the commissioners cast doubt on the state requested study to determine the value of those renewables?
That's how it always happens. We pay for these studies, we get experts who know what they're talking about, they come up with numbers and the PUC commissions go, no, we don't like those numbers.
Yeah, so they're gonna put forward a new process with new hearings on what a net metering overhaul should be.
Bureaucracy.
Well, this is why I say with, with Kelly AI, and the only hope for this was that the commissioners would change. It's clear that they're not going to change, or if they change, they're gonna be replaced by people with the same bent. And this isn't gonna go anywhere. So, and some of this is related to, that announcement they had made, this legacy period, that was all part of the proposals that were put forward by the utilities and Clean Energy New Hampshire and the coalition. So I don't know where this stuff is going, but
They
that's.
didn't
not
make it
encouraging.
worse, right? They just kept it the same.
Yeah.
The net metering
So far.
deal, yeah. Who knows next year?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the problem is that you would have thought that since they came to a decision on that would stick. But what they are apparently going to do is they're going to put together a new study and reevaluate whether to change the net metering regs or not. So,
They're gonna keep changing rules until they get the answer.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw this one, Doug.
Oh, yeah, that's quite a bit about it.
That was interesting because you basically have two utilities fighting with one another.
Kinda, and that's been going on for years, but this is a big deal. I mean, it's 350 million, which maybe isn't a lot to them, but it sounds like a lot to us. And it's an antitrust lawsuit. So they're basically saying they've been monopolizing the grid essentially. And then what I'd already been known for some time is that they were the key people fighting this. Remember, there was a power line coming from Canada that was going through Maine, and folks in Maine were fighting it tooth and nail. But their single largest funder for the anti-power line campaign was NextEra. They were putting like I think it was at least $10 million, some pretty large amount for grassroots supposedly effort. And so Evangrid, the folks that were building the power line, are saying, you screwed us to the tune of 350 million because of all the lost revenue, all the money we would have gotten if the power line had been built 2 or 3 years ago. I guess it is still getting built, and they did actually fix the breaker that was the
Well,
issue.
they were also claiming that there was a safety violation because NextEra was not doing necessarily upgrades that were required
Yeah.
for safety regs
Yeah.
to dissuade this import of power from Canada. And it's very sleazy. So
The NRC, that regulates Seabrook, they claim that it wasn't a safety concern or there wasn't weakening it, but NRC is always, bending over backwards on behalf of the industry in my experience for many years. There's a longer article actually in Seacoast Online that just came out a couple of days ago that actually goes into more detail.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It is a lawsuit,
But,
so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But it seems like they have a pretty good argument. They actually quoted, I think it's in the lawsuit, but it's in that other article. They quoted a witness, somebody from NextEra, I guess, who actually admitted, like in court, in a separate case, that we have, quote, veto power over new additions to the grid. Basically, we're going to screw the other guys, and so they pretty much admitted it. So I presume that would be Exhibit A, the whole argument. So, I don't know whether it really reflects on whether Seabrook is safe or not, but it certainly reflects on future, connections to the grid. And this could be really important for offshore wind because a key connection point could be at Seabrook,
Right.
And at least they did fix the breaker, so it's no longer a specific issue of that. And they got Evangrid to pay for the upgrade too, which I thought seemed kind of,
Really?
nasty. And Evangrid, I guess, is complaining about that too. But at the time, they're just like, hey, let's just do it, So anyway, it's quite a mess. Um,
Well,
yeah.
so on a more positive note, so this is, the Biden administration is attempting to commit as much of the funds as possible that are allocated through the Inflation Reduction Act. This is another project that doing to, they're trying to accelerate the interconnection process, and they're going for some requests for proposals, I imagine, for people who can come up with innovative mechanisms using AI to speed up the interconnection application process. So, and they're trying to allocate as much of these funds as they can before January 20th. Because once the funds are allocated, it's apparently very difficult to claw that back. But this doesn't help us with the tax credit stuff. So it's going to happen.
Mhm.
Anyway, those were some interesting things that I came across.
I have one other one too.
Go. Well,
Um,
I just wanted to say I'm proposing that we cancel the next meeting on December 19th. Does anyone have any strong feelings? I'm just getting way behind. I
think that's a fun idea.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
December meetings. But just in the paper today, City of Portsmouth is looking into, or at least their energy committee is proposing to use their landfill, which is a little flatter. It's got a little undulations. So this is the Jones Avenue landfill, Portsmouth. It's right on the Sagamore Creek. It was a big issue about 20 years ago because it turned out it was leaking some nasty stuff. And this one guy basically forced them to repackage the whole thing because it didn't really have a proper liner or a cap on it. Anyway, it's been sitting there all capped, and I don't know how many acres, but it's pretty substantial. And so they're looking to put a big solar array in it. They haven't gone to the city yet, but several members of the city council are involved. So
Do you know if the facility, do you know Pete Rice?
I do, but yeah, sure you'd be involved. But
Yeah, I would think so.
yeah, I know a bunch of people. I used to live in Portsmouth.
Oh, okay.
So,
I wonder if so who's putting this, would it be owned by the city?
well, they haven't decided that yet. They were saying, it could be either
They could lease it to someone or something.
PPA or
Yeah.
have the city own it, and that's, still to be determined. But it sounds like it could be pretty substantial, not as big as the Manchester one, I guess, but probably on the megawatt order.
I wonder if they would also be looking to solicit out of, other municipalities to participate in that.
Yeah, I don't know. Not sure what their needs are, but
I would think they need a lot more than a megawatt. It's probably in the megawatt size. So I would think they'd use it all.
yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, no, I was just doing some quick calculations, like how many wind turbines would they need, and it's probably around 20 megawatts for the city.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just figuring out the population, average use, but then you've got all those hotels.
But we're
Talking
talking about, so if they're building, this would be for municipal.
well, yes, I don't know what,
Governmental purposes, that
Right.
it wouldn't be the general
That's-
population.
yeah.
So I don't know they do have some pretty big facilities.
Yeah.
in Portsmouth.
Mhm. Yeah,
Of
but yeah, maybe they'd have extra. It's just municipal. Yeah.
course, they might actually work with their school board and be able to have.
I
Okay.
also know the city planner there too. We used to work together quite a
Who's
bit. Peter Fritz. He's actually been upgraded. He was the environmental planner, but now he's the charge of the whole planning shebang. So anyway,
Okay, so we are not going to have the December 19th meeting. Our next meeting will be on January 2nd. And enjoy the holidays.
You as well.
Thank you, everyone. That's about it.